The family meeting had been called for 2 p.m. sharp at my parents' house in Coral Gables, and I arrived exactly on time wearing a simple sundress I'd bought at a local boutique for $35. The living room buzzed with excitement as the Vasquez family gathered to discuss the details of Mom and Dad's 30th anniversary celebration, a 7-day Mediterranean cruise aboard the luxury liner Celestial Horizon. The house felt like a travel agency office, with cruise brochures, itinerary printouts, and reservation confirmations spread across every surface. My sister Carmen sat at the dining table with her laptop open, coordinating what appeared to be a military-level operation involving flights, ground transportation, and shore excursions for 23 family members. "Elena, there you are," Carmen said without looking up from her detailed spreadsheets. "We were just finalizing the cabin arrangements and shore excursion bookings." "Happy early anniversary, Mom and Dad," I said, kissing both parents on the cheek before settling into the remaining chair. "Thank you, Mija," Mom replied warmly, though her attention quickly returned to Carmen's presentation about spa packages and specialty dining reservations. I listened as my family discussed their elaborate celebration plans with the enthusiasm of people planning the trip of a lifetime. The guest list included my parents, my older brother Miguel with his wife Sofia and their 2 children ages 8 and 12, Carmen with her husband Diego and their teenage daughter, my younger brother Carlos with his fiancée Ana, plus Aunt Maria, Uncle Roberto, 3 cousins and several longtime family friends. 23 people in total, all booked on one of the most prestigious cruise lines in the world. "The ship has incredible amenities," Carmen was explaining, pulling up photos on her tablet of marble-appointed suites and crystal chandeliers. 5-star restaurants, a world-class spa with treatments from around the world, exclusive entertainment featuring Broadway-caliber shows. This is going to be the trip of a lifetime. Miguel nodded approvingly as he reviewed the deck plans. "The family suites we've booked have private balconies overlooking the Mediterranean. The kids are going to love the water slides and rock-climbing walls. And the adult-only areas," Sophia added with a laugh. 7 days of peace while the kids are at supervised activities. "How much is this costing?" I asked casually, genuinely curious about the logistics of such an elaborate family celebration. The room went quiet for a moment. Carmen and Miguel exchanged meaningful glances with our parents. "Elena," Dad said with a slight edge to his voice that I'd learned to recognize over the years, "don't worry about the finances. Miguel and Carmen have been very generous in organizing this celebration for your mother and me." To them, I was Elena Vasquez, the family disappointment who'd walked away from a promising career in finance to pursue what they called travel industry foolishness. What they didn't know was that their struggling daughter had spent the last 8 years building Vasquez Maritime Holdings into one of the largest luxury cruise and shipping empires in the Caribbean and Mediterranean. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my family believed I was barely scraping by as a travel agent working out of a cramped office, I'd been quietly assembling a fleet of luxury vessels, cargo ships, and private yachts that generated over $93 million annually. The crown jewel of my fleet was the Celestial Horizon itself, the very ship where they'd planned their perfect anniversary celebration. "Elena," Miguel interrupted my thoughts, setting down his coffee cup with the serious expression he'd perfected during his MBA program, "we need to discuss something important with you." "What's that?" Carmen closed her laptop and turned to face me directly. "We've been working on this celebration for 6 months, coordinating schedules, booking the best accommodations, planning shore excursions that will create memories for a lifetime." "That sounds wonderful. The thing is," Dad continued, settling back in his leather recliner, "this cruise represents a significant financial investment. Miguel and Carmen have put a lot of their own money into making this special for your mother and me. I appreciate that. It's really generous of them. The cabins we've booked are quite expensive," Carmen added, pulling out a folder thick with reservation confirmations. "The family suites alone cost $15,000 each for the week. The premium dining packages, the shore excursions in Rome and Barcelona, the spa treatments we've pre-booked for Mom." I nodded, still unsure why they were explaining the costs in such detail. "What we're trying to say," Miguel finally said, his voice taking on the diplomatic tone he used for difficult business negotiations, "is that there's no room for you on this cruise." The words hit like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. "I see. It's not personal, Elena," Mom said quickly, her voice carrying the forced brightness she used when trying to soften disappointing news. It's just that the others have contributed significantly to making this happen, and we have limited space in the cabin arrangements we've made. The ship has a capacity of over 3,000 passengers, I said quietly. Yes, but the family suites in our price range were extremely limited, Carmen explained. We booked these reservations 8 months ago, and they were the last available adjoining suites on the premium deck level. We know you'd want to come, Carlos added, his voice carrying a note of genuine sympathy. But realistically, even if we could find you a cabin, you probably couldn't afford the cost anyway. How much would a cabin cost? I asked. Carmen consulted her detailed spreadsheet. The remaining available cabins start at $8,000 for an interior room with no windows. Ocean view cabins are $12,000, and balcony suites start at $18,000. Plus, Diego chimed in, you'd need flights to Barcelona, which are running about $1,500 this close to departure. Then there are the shore excursions, specialty dining, spa treatments, alcohol packages. You're looking at a minimum of $12,000 to $15,000, Miguel concluded. And that's for the most basic accommodation. Dad leaned forward in his chair, his expression mixing genuine concern with disappointment. Elena, sweetheart, we know you're still struggling to establish yourself in the travel business. This kind of expense just isn't realistic for someone in your position. Pie position? You know what we mean, Miguel said gently, but with the unmistakable condescension of someone who believed they were stating obvious facts. You're doing your best with that little travel agency, but let's be honest about your financial situation. Sophia nodded sympathetically. We've all been there, Elena. Starting out in business is tough. But you can't spend money you don't have on luxury vacations. The assumption that I was financially struggling stung more than the exclusion itself. They genuinely believed they were protecting me from bankruptcy while planning to celebrate on a ship I'd purchased for $47 million 3 years ago. Maybe next time, Mom suggested hopefully, reaching over to pat my hand. When you're more established in your career and can afford this kind of celebration. There's no room for you on our anniversary cruise, Dad announced with the finality of someone making an executive decision. But we'll take lots of pictures and share stories when we get back. And maybe we can plan a smaller, more affordable family gathering when we return. Uncle Roberto, who'd been quietly reviewing the shore excursion options, looked up from his brochures. Elena, maybe this is for the best anyway. Cruise ships can be very crowded and overwhelming. You might be more comfortable with a staycation or a local beach weekend. The condescension was suffocating. I sat quietly for a moment, processing not just the rejection but the casual dismissal of my financial capabilities and personal preferences. They had no idea that I could buy and sell the celestial horizon 10 times over without affecting my net worth. I understand, I said calmly, reaching for my phone. Actually, let me make a quick call about this situation. Elena, if you're thinking about trying to book something last minute, Carmen began, her voice carrying the patient tone of someone explaining obvious facts to a child. I've already checked availability. There's literally nothing left in a reasonable price range. No, nothing like that, I interrupted, scrolling through my contacts to find the number I needed. I found Captain Rodriguez's contact information and placed the call on speaker, setting the phone on the coffee table where everyone could hear the conversation. Captain Rodriguez, this is Elena Vasquez. I hope I'm not interrupting your preparation schedule. Ms. Vasquez. What a pleasant surprise. Not at all, we're just running through final safety drills and provisioning checks. How can I assist you today? I wanted to confirm that the Vasquez family anniversary celebration is properly arranged for next week's Mediterranean itinerary. Absolutely, ma'am. We have your family group booked in some of our finest accommodations. The reservation includes the family suites on Deck 12, specialty dining privileges and priority booking for shore excursions. Is there anything special you'd like us to arrange for the celebration? Actually, yes. There's been a change in plans. Please prepare the owner's presidential suite for an additional guest. There was a brief pause on the line. The presidential suite? Of course, ma'am. Should I have housekeeping prepare it with the full premium amenities package? Yes, please. Full concierge service, private dining access, unlimited spa privileges and priority tender service for all shore excursions. Consider it done, Ms. Vasquez. The presidential suite will be ready with champagne service, fresh flowers, and our signature welcome amenities. Anything else I can arrange? That covers everything for now, Captain. Thank you for your attention to detail. It's always a pleasure to ensure your comfort aboard the Celestial Horizon, ma'am. We'll see you at embarkation. I ended the call and looked around the room at my family's stunned faces. The silence was so complete I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Elena, Dad said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. Who was that? Captain Rodriguez. He's the captain of the Celestial Horizon. How do you know the ship's captain? Carmen asked, her voice shaking slightly. Because I own the ship. The silence that followed was deafening. Miguel's coffee mug slipped from his hands, crashing to the floor and splattering coffee across Mom's Persian rug. Carmen's laptop slid off her knees as she stared at me in disbelief. What did you just say? Mom whispered. I own the Celestial Horizon. Along with 6 other cruise ships, 12 cargo vessels and a fleet of private yachts. That's impossible, Carlos said, his voice cracking. I pulled out my phone and opened the Vasquez Maritime Holdings app, showing them the real-time fleet management dashboard. Celestial Horizon is the flagship of my cruise line. I purchased her from Royal Caribbean International 3 years ago for $47 million. Dad leaned forward to look at my phone screen, his face pale. Elena, this says you own a fleet of 19 vessels with a combined value of approximately $230 million. Annual revenue last year was $93 million, and we're projected to exceed $110 million this year. But you work in travel, Carmen protested weakly. I own a travel company, Vasquez Maritime Holdings. We operate luxury cruises throughout the Caribbean and Mediterranean, plus cargo shipping routes to South America. Miguel was staring at my phone in disbelief, scrolling through revenue reports and vessel specifications. The profit margins, these numbers are real. Very real. We're actually considering an IPO next year to fund expansion into Pacific routes and potentially acquire a competitor's Mediterranean fleet. Elena, Mom said, tears beginning to form in her eyes, why didn't you tell us what you'd built? Because every conversation about my career became a lecture about my poor choices and lack of ambition. It was easier to let you believe I was struggling while I focused on growing the business. But we thought you were barely making ends meet, Carlos said, his voice filled with genuine confusion. I live simply because I prefer to reinvest profits back into the company rather than spend money on status symbols. The small apartment you're always worried about? It's actually a 3,000 square foot penthouse I own outright in downtown Miami. Carmen picked up her laptop from the floor with shaking hands. You really own the ship we're sailing on? I really do. Along with the cruise line that operates it, employs the crew and manages every aspect of the passenger experience. The presidential suite you mentioned. Dad began. It's the ship's most exclusive accommodation. 2,000 square feet with a private deck, personal butler service and exclusive dining privileges. It normally costs $25,000 per week and is typically reserved for heads of state and Fortune 500 CEOs. Sophia found her voice first. And you're just giving it to yourself. I'm using owner privileges to ensure a family member has appropriate accommodations, I replied diplomatically. I called Captain Rodriguez back to clarify the arrangements for my family's benefit. Captain, I have my family here with questions about next week's voyage. Of course, Ms. Vasquez. How can I help clarify things for them? Could you explain the presidential suite amenities for my relatives? Certainly. The presidential suite is our most luxurious accommodation, featuring a master bedroom with king-size bed, separate living and dining areas, private library, marble bathroom with jacuzzi, and a wraparound deck with panoramic ocean views. Guests enjoy 24-hour butler service, private chef available upon request, priority booking for all ship amenities, and exclusive access to the owner's deck and private pool. And the weekly rate? $25,000, ma'am, though of course there's no charge when you're aboard your own vessel. Miguel's hands were visibly shaking as he processed this information. Elena, you really own this ship? Ms. Vasquez owns the entire Celestial Horizon and serves as president of Vasquez Maritime Holdings, Captain Rodriguez confirmed through the speaker. She's been instrumental in upgrading our fleet to the highest luxury standards in the industry. After I ended the call, the family sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Elena, Dad finally said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry. We had no idea what you'd accomplished. You had no idea because you assumed failure based on my appearance and lifestyle choices rather than asking about the actual substance of my work. But why didn't you correct us? Carmen asked, still staring at the fleet management data on my phone. When? During the family dinners where you lectured me about getting a real job? At the holidays where you all discussed my lack of ambition and poor financial decisions? We were trying to help, Mom said defensively. You were trying to fix what you perceived as broken. But I wasn't broken. I was building something extraordinary while you weren't paying attention. Miguel ran his hands through his hair, leaving it disheveled. So when we said there was no room for you on the cruise, you were telling the ship owner that she couldn't sail on her own vessel. This is unbelievable, Carlos muttered, shaking his head. What's unbelievable is that none of you ever asked about the actual details of my work. You saw, travel industry, and immediately assumed failure and financial struggle. Dad stood up and began pacing around the living room, his usual composed demeanor completely shattered. Elena, the money we've spent on this cruise booking, how much of that was actually necessary? None of it. I was planning to comp the entire family celebration anyway. I own the ship, employ the crew, control the itinerary, and manage all the onboard services. You were going to pay for everything? Carmen asked, her voice barely audible. It's your parents' 30th anniversary. Of course I was going to cover the costs. But we excluded you from the trip, Miguel said, the full irony finally hitting him. Yes, you did. You excluded the owner of the ship from sailing on her own vessel. Mom burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. Elena, we're terrible parents. We completely misjudged everything about your life. You're not terrible parents. You just couldn't see past your preconceptions about what success looks like. Can you forgive us? Dad asked, his voice breaking. There's nothing to forgive. But I hope this helps you understand that success comes in many forms and doesn't always look like traditional career paths. Carmen wiped her eyes and looked at me with newfound respect. So what happens now? With the cruise, I mean. Now we all go on a wonderful anniversary celebration for Mom and Dad. The presidential suite has 3 bedrooms and plenty of space for anyone who is concerned about accommodations. Elena, Miguel said, I need to ask, how did you afford to buy cruise ships? I started with a single small charter vessel 8 years ago. Used my finance background to analyze the luxury travel market, identified undervalued opportunities, and secured investors who believed in my business plan. Then I reinvested every profit into acquiring larger vessels and expanding routes. But the initial capital investment. I saved every penny from my finance job at Goldman Sachs, took calculated risks based on market research, and worked 18-hour days for 3 years straight. By year 4, I was generating enough revenue to acquire larger vessels through a combination of cash and financing. Carlos shook his head in amazement. And we thought you were failing. You thought I was failing because I wasn't following a traditional corporate career path. But sometimes the most successful ventures look like failures from the outside, especially in the early stages. Dad sat back down and took Mom's hand. Elena, can you forgive 2 foolish parents who completely underestimated their daughter's vision and capabilities? Of course, Dad. What can we do to make this right? Enjoy your anniversary cruise. Let me give you the celebration you deserve. And after that, maybe we can work on better communication. I'd love to share what I'm building instead of hiding it from my own family. Over the next 2 hours, I explained the details of Vasquez Maritime Holdings, the routes we operated, the luxury amenities we offered, the crew training programs I'd implemented, the environmental sustainability initiatives I'd pioneered, and the expansion plans for new destinations and vessel acquisitions. My family listened with growing amazement and pride, finally understanding that their struggling daughter had built something remarkable while they weren't paying attention. The employment numbers alone, Miguel said, reviewing the company information on my phone, you've created jobs for over 2,000 people across the fleet. Good jobs with excellent benefits, comprehensive training programs, and advancement opportunities. I believe in taking care of the people who make our success possible. Elena, Mom said, I'm so proud of what you've accomplished. And so sorry we didn't see it sooner. Thank you, Mom. Will you really join us on the cruise? I wouldn't miss it. It's your 30th anniversary. Of course I want to celebrate with you. That evening, I called Captain Rodriguez to finalize the arrangements for what would now be a truly special family celebration. Ms. Vasquez, should I arrange any special activities for your parents' anniversary? Yes. Please coordinate with the chef for a private anniversary dinner on the sky deck with the 7-course tasting menu and wine pairings. Also work with the entertainment director to arrange a surprise renewal of vows ceremony at sunset on day 4. Wonderful ideas. Your family is very fortunate to have such a thoughtful daughter. Thank you, Captain. See you at embarkation next week. A week later, as we sailed through the Mediterranean on my ship, Dad raised his champagne glass during our family dinner in the presidential suite's private dining room. To Elena, who built something beautiful while we were too blind to see it. We're sorry we missed the journey, but we're grateful to be part of celebrating the destination. As the sun set over the Greek islands and my family finally understood what I'd accomplished, I realized something important. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving your family wrong about your failure. Sometimes it's proving them wrong about what success looks like. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they'll love you enough to celebrate your success rather than questioning how you achieved it.